Hey guys, it's been me boy Eli,
It's me,
and we're here to
Joe.
talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender, the new live-action TV show coming out on Netflix, and yeah, yeah,
I love how that sort of indicates where we're heading here, because people were a bit skeptical of Netflix's last live action adaptation of like One Piece, and people were like, oh, that's good actually.
yeah.
That's actually we like this. This is
Mhm.
a cool take on One Piece, right? So people were hoping, yeah, Avatar live action by Netflix
Mhm.
can't be any worse than the Night Shyamalan movie. Like we can only go up, right? We can only go up, and
We have a lot to say.
we definitely have quite a bit to say. I feel like to preface this, I've only seen the first episode.
No, yes, I myself have taken the opportunity to watch all the episodes. You were just busy, so you could only get to one. I was
Yeah,
able to watch most of it.
but I feel like just watching one episode, kind of tells me like where we're going in this
Yeah,
show.
and for some, um, it could be. I'm not taking it away from people who enjoy the show. This is just particularly from our opinions and our thought process. That kind of, that spill. Because we did grow up with Avatar: The Last Airbender. That was a show that really defined a generation. If you think about it, it was a show that told people you could do this kind of stories in television, but not just in television, but in like animation, right?
Yeah.
It truly is, and I hate to say this, it's a light in the bottle. But like that show was so impactful for a lot of people. Like even nowadays, people still like reference it or acknowledge it or see it. So seeing it now with a new take of live action, which already kind of feels very for some people disingenuous because it kind of I don't want to say shit on the idea of animation, but a lot of people just don't like the idea of turning something animated into live action because it kind of defeats the purpose.
There's a bit of elitism when it comes to, and I think you still see this a lot of times when it comes to the animation medium of like
Mm-hmm.
animation is for kids. Like kids only watch cartoons, stuff like that. But it's like no, it's an art form. You
Mm-hmm.
have tons of different types of animated works.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mean, pick your name of the litter when it comes to stuff like Pixar or like
Any any
any
any
Miyazaki
any
film.
foreign or domestic animated project that has landed itself into critical acclaim.
Yeah, I mean the Spider Verse movies, people love those. Obviously, I
Those are
mean,
based off comic books.
yeah, but more to the point, they're
Yeah.
animated, and people
Mm-hmm.
really, it's like it's one of those things of like animation isn't just for kids thing that
No.
it's the classic thing people would say it a lot on Twitter, of
Yeah.
just like, hey, we should give animation more respect, and that's kind of like why I think having it. Why that's an interesting talking point when it comes to like whenever
Yeah.
we get live action adaptations of anime
Mm-hmm.
works like Avatar, because it's like, well, I mean, there's certain things you can only do in animation, right?
Yeah.
And you're kind of losing some of that like spectacle and like.
Like the level of expressionism can only
Mhm.
be done through animation.
Yes.
The level of scope and scale can only be done through animation. I mean, oftentimes like whenever you see like something of scale or any of those that we just mentioned, a lot of times it's storyboarded the fuck out, and they're like, yeah,
Mhm.
it's drawn out. But it's probably because like yeah, it's just this notion that it's for kids, and all that kind of stuff, which is just sad because like um, I always equate it to like people who think chess is a more sophisticated thing than some other kind of sport that would be almost similar.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
in terms of like
yeah, because like chess is taken seriously because it seems sophisticated.
yeah, it's like sort of highbrow, but then it's like chess is a simple game.
Yeah,
You can figure it out.
yeah,
So I guess there's like chess elitists when it comes to checker players.
yeah.
Just
Like moving D1 to D7 or I don't know, fucking no. I don't know
all I
terminals.
know is that the horse goes in an elf format.
Yeah,
Pong can move too. Like the rook goes burr.
The Rook goes burr.
Yeah.
Yeah. But more to the point is that we will be talking about this show, some of its up and downs, and some of the things that we have taken notice about it. Because again, when this show was first announced, a lot of people were very excited for it. Because at first, the original creators were a part of it, right? And uh, I'm I'm assuming a lot of people forgot that at some point they left due to creative differences, and that's always a bad sign for me. Because usually when I hear the creative differences, I'm like, okay, but what do you mean by creative differences? And they're never gonna tell you because they want to make sure you watch the show.
Yeah.
But it's always like, what did you want versus what did they want, and whose idea was actually a better, you know?
Like it's like it's like where was the what was the point where you can no longer see yourselves working together, right?
Yeah.
Like what was the breaking point? And I mean, at least I feel like we kind of, because I know we talked about this before on one of our other episodes, but yeah, it's a very it's kind of clear having seen. I mean, you've seen the entire first season, and after seeing, especially after seeing the first episode, yeah, you kind of see
Yeah.
where the original creators might have been coming from, you know?
Yeah, no, it's very much that. And uh, how about this? We'll start with the first episode. Like, what kind of changes they've done? What what was the first sign of things to come? And well, I will not be spoiling anything because you yourself said you still kind of want to watch more of it to form yourself your own opinion. We're probably not going to get to that in our future episodes because like I feel like what you said is done, but even you still want to make your own personal opinion about it.
Well, yeah, it's more of like I kind of want to see how far it goes, because
Yeah.
in my opinion, I feel like, not to say that the first episode has essentially sort of colored my experience for the rest of the series, but it's very telling on how this first episode goes down.
Mhm.
That it's like, okay, I think I see where the problem for the show lies in.
Yeah, they're very much that, and it's funny because one of the things I do remember them talking about is that they will be going through the Airbender genocide. Is basically what it is. The genocide of the Airbenders,
Yes.
and that's literally what we start off with. I was actually taken aback.
Yeah, because if anything, this first half of this first episode is more of like, because obviously in the original show you start out with Sokka and Katara finding Aang in the iceberg,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. We still get that in this episode, but it's in that whole bit is in like the second half of the episode. The first half of the episode is all about more or less just setting up like before the Fire Nation attacks,
Mm-hmm.
and then the attack on the Southern Air Temple, and and getting frozen in the ice, that
Yeah,
stuff, right?
but even before that, you yourself had an issue or I think the better word is concern about is when the narration started.
Yeah, the famous opening narration to Avatar, like Earth, water, Earth, fire, air, all four elements. Long ago, the four nations moved together, harmony, then everything changed with the Fire Nation attack. That sort of shtick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in the live action version, they still do that. But I will admit, it kind of they fluff it up a bit, which I
Oh,
feel
they did.
like, which I think is always kind of like a sign of like, okay, you guys are sort of like adding more stuff to something that's already simple and effective,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't always good, because that opening line
Yeah, it's
narration,
quotable.
it's it's
It's even like to a point where it was memed, but not memed in a bad way.
yeah, it's a very memorable opening line and narration and perfect explanation of the show. Short, simple, to the point, and to try to make sense because it was an anime show that only lasted like 22
Yeah.
minutes.
Now, granted,
You gotta,
even in the first episode, it was like an extended version because remember, it includes how Sokka and Katara were like
yeah, like
like
how they ended up with their,
like their dad leaving, mom dead basically leaving with
yeah,
grandma.
yeah,
But like Katara says, like I still have hope. right?
Yeah.
And later on, we get to the more well-known like everything changed until the Fire Nation attacked.
Yeah.
And but this is like the most fluffed up one. And even I was like, what's going on?
Yeah, it feels weird because it sort of you know, like it adds a lot more stuff to it, and you
Mhm.
kind of just like it kind of reminded me of the M Night Shyamalan how it opened up,
Oh.
where it was just a scrolling text thing, you know, of Katara reading the lines, and it's just sort of like, why are we? Because it feels like this weird thing with some writers where it's like you're trying to like add a bunch of world building at the start here
Mhm.
instead of just doing it naturally.
Yeah.
Like you just want to just like you know feed the viewer a bunch of stuff like already at the beginning because
They
it's
tried to
like
Star Wars crawl it, and we're like,
I mean yeah in the M Night Shyamalan version it felt
yeah.
like
Well,
that.
there's a lot of movies that try to do that too, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like the point of the Star Wars crawl is like one to set up like more of a deeper thing, but like you're still gonna get like world building as you go.
Also, it's an homage to like old serials that
Yeah.
George liked to
Mhm.
watch. You know, it's mainly that like previously on that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like that was like our first indication because like we knew they were gonna again from like interviews and stuff they were gonna go through what happened with um, the Airbenders, but it feels kind of weird and kind of like what's the word I would be looking for, but essentially like not as impactful, right? Because the thing about the air nomads, right, was that we know that Aang is the last Airbender by the time we Katara and Saga meet him, and from there, like he becomes in denial because he's like, there's no way they could have like taken out my entire people, and then when he finds out, it's like impactful, and all the stuff I just mentioned, which takes about like 2 to 3 episodes, happens in all one. Granted, yes, it's a longer episode, but like it feels very bloated.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because of that first half just being like this sort of. I think as much as it is interesting that they do go into the events of that of
Mm-hmm.
that night where Aang had left and the Fire Nation attacks and just massacres the air nomads.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it, it feels a bit unnecessary because in the original show, obviously they don't show it because the kids, at the end of the day, it was on Nickelodeon. They can't show that sort of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but it's implied, right? And like if you feel like when you see in the show when you see the remains of Gyatso, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's much more impactful because you're sort of like, oh, like
Yeah, no, you like it wasn't that long ago that I rewatched like the original series, and there were moments I'm like, this is a lot more mature than I remember,
mm,
because like you kind of don't think about it as a kid, but then when you grow up, it's like, oh, that that was a real thing. That was an actual situation that happened,
mm-hmm.
right? And it's one of those things like granted I'm not saying you should show kids like horrible things. Don't do that. You're gonna scar a kid. But like it's introduced in a way where it's like as a child you're like, oh, that's what happened, and then like when you grow when you become an adult you're like, oh, that's what happened. It's that realization that like they explain it to you in a way where you can understand. Right?
Yeah.
Kind of Mr. Rogers it.
Yeah, but I think it's more of like for me it's more of like not showing it
Mm-hmm.
actually adds a bit more to
Yeah.
the weight of it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you see all you see is the aftermath and it's like, oh wow, like this
Yeah.
is like a truly tragic event. Here, I mean, I think what it feels like what's off to me is like you feel like you have all these characters and you don't have like I think it's supposed to be like it's supposed to be make you feel sad, right? That all these people are dying and stuff, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like you haven't really met had enough time to spend a whole chunk of time with them, so
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of just like they're kind of just background characters, just getting off one by one. It's
Mm-hmm.
like okay, that's
But one of the things that um, I feel that really kind of bothered me too was, and again, that oftentimes with these shows, the first episode is a very much indicator of like what to expect. Like you were saying, one thing I was not expecting that was going on with the show is how fast it was going. Like everything was going quick, 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 quick.
Yeah, I think that's also an interesting thing about it too, right? Where it's like, okay, so we have, because we spent all that first half, divulging in this sort of like extra lore stuff that we never saw in the show, like the original show.
Yep.
That means we are essentially kind of just speed running some the actual bits of the show that we do know about, right? That are getting adapted, right?
Yeah, and then we started. It becomes even more noticeable when they make certain changes. Like for example, for me, one of the weirdest changes they did in that first episode is like giving sort of Katara a mental block from her committing to waterbending. Like they already gave like for me, I already gave a very reasonable explanation. Is that they find out you're a waterbender, bad stuff can happen. Even though like that always felt kind of weird to me. Like I understand why you did it. I understand that's being the reason, but her giving her, but also giving her a mental block, and also like it just becomes overcomplicated. Is what I'm saying. Like even I'm having a hard time explaining it right now.
Well, yeah, because she's like obviously in the original show, like she's a waterbender, but she's not like super skilled at it, right? She's still a novice. Like over the course of the show, she gets to get better and like able to master waterbending and stuff, right? But here, it's not only is she like a novice, she's also discouraged because the Fire Nation, pretty much killed all the water benders in her tribe. So it's very much like, hey, you can't be water bending. We don't want you to get like snatched up too, right? And also like she also has this, again like you said, a mental sort of block of like, I try to focus on stuff, but it still doesn't really work out. And Aang has to tell her like, oh, like the monks told me, it's all about like balance and stuff. You gotta just balance it out. And once she hears that and like sort of does it, it's like, oh wow, all right, I seem to have got this down.
Yeah, but no, it's so weird how often they speed run through most of that too, because you were noticing that like are we now getting Zuko in on this, and are we now like setting up like this this friendship that like kind of happens real quick and real fast.
Yeah, and that is it's so weird because you think, hey, 8 episodes are like hour long. You don't really need to do this sort of thing, like you don't need to speed things up. Like you're a TV show. You can spend time like letting the characters talk to each other and like get to know one another. Like the fact that like the first half of this episode is just solely focused on like stuff that expanding like world lore from the original show that doesn't seem like is necessary.
No.
To do, because again, like legitimately, you can start off the episode, the same as you always did, right? Like at like that moment, like just like the original show did, right? You don't have to start it off in that moment. Maybe have like a little flashback here, just showing, the Fire Nation attacking and like devastating, the various nations. But like, I don't know, it just seems weird, and it feels like I don't know, like, it feels like it's supposed to be setting some stuff up, but it's like why,
Yeah, no, and I was there's a lot of setup too. Like I just found it so weird that we're getting introduced to Sozin so quickly. Sozin, who's a very important character in Avatar, especially in relationship with Aang's past life with Roku. So quick and so immediate, and they're already establishing Sozin Comet, which is something that is I don't know, it's not done in a very organic way,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's sort of the issue. I think you and I have sort of started to see it in. I mean, I've definitely seen it, but I think you are also seeing that
Yeah,
as well.
no,
Where
like
there are certain moments and stuff where there's certain build-ups to certain things that don't feel like organically done, like very like thought out and paced. It's just sort of like fast, fast, fast.
So like no, you're right because not to go into spoilers, but like I said, I've finished the season. I watched all of the episodes, and there's a moment that they literally had to like stop the scene to introduce a character that doesn't show up until season two. Like
Mhm.
literally, I looked away for a quick second. I, I heard a voice. At first, it's not saying it's a character voice. Like you immediately know who the character is or whatever. But I hear a voice and I hear someone saying, "Is that a so and so?" And I turn around like, "What are you doing here? Why are you here?" And it's so distracting because like I'm like this character has a very important role, but that role doesn't happen until way later. Also, it doesn't make sense that they would be here. Like it breaks the immersion, and like he's only this character's only there to explain a certain thing, and like it's so weird to me because
Mhm.
I'm just like, why are you here? Even some like it's so weird. Um, even I can't. Uh, it's an interesting take, man. I'll just say that because even like some characterizations I feel are also either rushed or changed to a way where it doesn't make any sense to me. And like I won't go into it too much, right? Because I don't want to spoil it for anyone out there. But for me, this show is like really structured weird because Avatar: The Last Airbender was one of those shows that I tend to tell people like, is a good example of a well structured show.
Mhm.
Like some of the like episodes that people consider filler end up actually mattering later on, or like establishing like important relationships or moments in those characters. Like one of the best examples I feel for that was the episode of like Kyoshi. Now, not the Kyoshi Wars, but the episode where like this village hates Aang because his past life killed someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that because what I liked about that one was that it was yes technically a filler episode, but it also establishes who
Avatar Kyoshi was.
and she was a bad bitch.
Yeah.
she was she's like yeah I killed that fucker.
Yeah, because he tries to like, he enters
Yeah,
the Avatar state to like talk to Kyoshi. He's like, hey, these people are saying bad things about you. Like, don't you want like the, tell them stuff? And it's like, no, I did it.
what?
He was an asshole.
Yeah, I had a very reasonable reason to do it. And I'm like, wait, what? And then like knowing that when Aang eventually like has a conversation with her, he's like, yeah, but that wasn't your fault. You just was too stupid. Like, I mean, honestly, man, personally, I feel like I killed the dude. You right? like that establishes her who she is, and then like whenever or even another good episode, the beach episode with Zuko and the
Oh,
girls.
and yeah, Azula and the rest of
Yeah,
them. Yeah.
yeah, it's like that's purely like at first starts off like a filler, like just like a regular like anime beach episode filler, and then like all of a sudden it's like, oh no, we're trauma dumping.
Yeah, yeah. You have the characters sort of talk about their various sort of problems and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. Yeah.
And then it leads on to like a lot of the other. But that's what I'm saying. Like the show has always been paced very well, but here it goes like real quick and fast, and some of the characterizations I feel like it's like really weirded out by it, and like changes in there too. I'm like again, I'm not gonna go that deep into it, but there's moments in the show I'm like, this feels very weird.
It feels off, and you're like just trying to struggle as to why. Why make it like this, right?
That's what I've been asking a lot of times. That there's like, okay, but why, right?
Mhm.
Now, granted, to say some positives because I feel like we've been kind of bashing on it for a good amount of time, right? To give some positives, as someone who's like watched the whole things, they ended up doing something that I was kind of hoping they did, where now with context we can like change things up or add things to something that wasn't there to flesh out certain characters. I feel like they did that with Ozai and Azula specifically, who like yeah, Ozai doesn't really is kind of like a hidden figure,
Mhm.
right? He's a presence. He's like not really much of a character in the original show.
Mhm.
Azula's more of the threat. Here, and that well, I'm not going too much into it. I feel like Ozai is hinted to be a little more complex,
Mhm.
and that might rub some people the wrong way. But I'm kind of interested to see where they go with him because it's implied that like he might be knowing that some of the stuff he's doing is kind of fucked up, right? And Azula, I think, might be like a make it or break it for some people in terms of characterization, because like there's moments where I kind of see where you're going with. It kind of goes into her like trying to get her, her daddy's approval, which doesn't really happen until the end of the season.
Yeah.
But they're kind of like establishing it right here, right now, which I'm like, no, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But and then if you watch the show, you know that like for a long time, Ozai was always like, listen, Zuko, I don't really fucking care about you. Your sister is who I love.
Yes.
And like here, um, it still has that sort of implication
Mm-hmm.
that like yeah he kind of prefers his daughter,
Mm-hmm.
but like it's also very much like because of that, Azula has to like prove herself more,
Yeah.
like that kind of thing. That's the way that I read it. Now, granted, I could be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm very interested to see where they go with those two characters because they're always kind of like one of the more talked about aspects. Like Ozai is like not much of a character. People kind of like on him, even though like the whole point is like he's kind of like a force of nature, right?
Yeah.
He's this ideology that Aang has to fight. While Zula was more of the villain, who because like if she beat Zuko, then like that's how fucked they are.
Yeah.
Like thematically it was like the future of the Fire Nation,
Yeah.
right? And this whole time I'm not talking about Zuko or Iroh, but honestly I feel like they're fine.
Yeah, for the little they are in the first episode,
Yeah.
they serve their purpose well.
And throughout the show, like they do establish what I feel like was always kind of one of the best parts of the show is the relationship between those two.
Mm.
They kind of like explore a little bit more, but like they fully establish like no, like these two are like a father and son show.
Mm-hmm.
Like they support each other, and I really like what they did with that. As someone who's seen the whole show, like I think those two actors do a great job. Honestly, all the actors are doing a great job. I just think the writing is really some of the more weaker parts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you feel about that though,
Um,
because I will say some dialogues really bad.
I think I may have said this to you when I was watching the first episode.
Yeah.
Of just like, you know, child acting is always one of those hard things to pull off because sometimes it's fine, most of the time it's just very awkward
Mhm.
and stilted.
Yeah.
Which I
No.
mean happens sometimes with some of these with some of the actors, which like they're child actors. Sometimes you gotta like you gotta just like let it slide.
Yeah. And like I said, they do some changes where in reality I see where you're coming from, but it's also like okay, but why? It feels kind of weird. But if you execute it well enough, I think it's fine. Yeah. But again, some there's gonna be some things that I don't want to say it's kind of like the Halo show,
Uh-huh.
where right now the season I think is better, but there's still some decisions I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that, Chief. Like literally, Chief. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know about that. But I think it's the show for me comes out to being just kind of like okay, which is kind of sad when you're thinking about Avatar: The Last Airbender, considering how like impactful that show was for a lot of people, for a lot of like animation, like storytelling. It kind of sucks that it's kind of seemed okay,
Mm-hmm.
and I want it to be better, and hopefully it will. I think there's enough positive word that makes people want at least want to check it out and give their own formal opinion, which is what I would recommend you guys to do. I mean, this is our opinion, yes, but like I totally understand if you're someone who likes it. I'm not taking that away from you.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. Like as I watch more the show, I'm hoping to see like if there are a bit more improvements. But right now, I think most people are very mixed on this show.
Yeah, there's like I have to check it up real quick. It's like a 60% tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes from like
The
critic
critics,
score, and then
yeah,
like 10%, 15% more for the audience, which I feel like that sounds about right. Because it's for me like watching the whole thing, I was like, it's okay. Some of the changes I feel are weird,
mm-hmm.
but I kind of get why you kind of want to do those changes, but also kind of and I also understand that you kind of want to tell it in a way where it still gets to the point. The changes though are the things that I feel are gonna be questionable for some people. But like I said, I feel like the actors are good. Some of the lines are weird because I'm thinking about how the grandma just said the opening lines.
Yeah, I had a real Family Guy moment, where like the joke in Family Guy where Peter goes like, "Oh, they say the name of the title, cut the credits, something like that."
Yeah.
I was literally like, he even like says like he is the last Airbender, and it's like, cut the credits, show the name of the show, we're out of here, folks, let's go.
Pack it up. No, I mean, even then she says like the original intro line.
She does do the straight up like actual original
Like I had to double take. I was like, wait, 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 wait.
like that's one of those like, hey, we referenced the thing you like.
Yeah, and
Like, you like that audience?
there's a lot of that too. There's a lot of times where they would like just say like line for line the line from the show, and I feel like nah, I probably wouldn't have done that. Because it makes me think of the show, and I'm just
Feels a
like
bit insincere, right?
exactly, exactly. And like there are moments for myself, I feel like again not going to go too much into it, but I feel like man, this seems kind of also kind of a little bit mean spirited.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not to say there's a specific character I'm talking about, and I felt that was very weird for that character. But again, I'll leave it to people to decide. For me, in a way to wrap it up, I think this show is fine. As someone who's seen all the episodes, um, and given had to really think about it, I think the show is fine. There really is an attention to detail on some of the areas. It kind of looks cheap in certain aspects, but I kind of get it. Sometimes it's hard to get that shit done. But there's attention to detail that I'm like, huh, they got that statue down right, or the sets or the colors and everything. I'm like, yeah, this feels right. This feels right. But there's also stuff that makes me interested to see where this goes. I just feel like for this season specifically, it's a little on the it's okay. Some questionable decisions, yes, but I can kind of see where you're going, and hopefully you kind of come out a little better. But for me, it's just kind of eh.
Yeah, I definitely get the part.
Yeah.
If I can get into watching more of the episode, I can probably make a better opinion about this. But so far, I'm very much of the like, okay, I really think the writers, or the creators of the show or whatever, really, really were like, we like Avatar, but we're gonna do some of our own things with it, and what we think is better for the show.
And that's a little.
And it's a little, you know, too much assuming from me, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah. And, like you're not in the room, you're just assuming,
Yeah, yeah,
and like you're not trying to put that as the final pin on it.
yeah. But there are moments in that, where I feel like it kind of comes off that way, and it's like I don't like to think like that. But at the same time, it is hard to not think like that. But overall, I mean, I probably would agree. It's definitely a mess show. I think that's what disappoints a lot of people too, because again, people were very much like, hey, this show is supposed to be like like a remedy
Mm-hmm.
to the M Night Shyamalan. Like it was supposed to be a palate cleanser to the bad
Yeah.
taste you got from watching that M Night Shyamalan movie, and then it's like, oh wait, this is not exactly what I wanted. This isn't. I guess I'll just have to rewatch Avatar again, the original show,
Which isn't bad.
which isn't bad. And
Yeah.
I think I think that's what it mostly is.
Yeah.
Just
And it's one of those things where I kind of expected it to be different, but I didn't expect it to be like that different. But I kind of have to get used to it because this is like because if I wanted to do the same thing, I just watch the anime show, right?
mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where like I get going back to the Halo TV show real quick, like I get the changes you did there. I think they're weird, but I understand that this is kind of not meant to be the exact same thing, right? It's kind of its own thing. That being said, I do think this show is just okay. Which again, like I said, kind of want to be better because it's Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but honestly, if you want better, just watch the original Garden. I think everyone can agree on that.
Yeah.
And that's probably where we'll put a cap on it. And if you enjoy what you're, be sure to follow us on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We have more active on Instagram where we put a link tree to all the official podcasts or podcasts like Apple Podcasts, but the spot, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, all the like, and a link to the YouTube where you can comment, like, subscribe. Be sure to get us up there, and a Patreon for any form of support. And yeah, it's been me, your boy Lang.
Me, Joe.
You guys having a good one. Enjoy Avatar in whatever way you want, even if it's the movie.
Hey, it makes a good like drinking night, right? Like take a shot every time you get a really nice shot on a close up face,
Yeah, or Aang.
Or Aang. Yeah, take a shot every time he says Aang.
Yep. Later, guys.